Hey guys, it's Who here. I'm back with the next installment in my Get to Know Co series. This time I'm going to cover what I think is a fairly underrated unit. That's right, you guessed it. It's the Soviet Combat Engineer. The Combat Engineer is, of course, a 4-man squad, so their damage isn't quite as good as a 6-man conscript squad, but at least at Vet 0, 4 of them are basically as good as 4 conscripts if you had a squad that only had 4 men left. But what really makes combat engineers so special, though, is their abilities. Let's cover some of those. Of course, most people know about their ability to tech and build the base structures. And a lot of people know, of course, that they can place mines. So those are pretty straightforward abilities. You can also build barbed wire. Okay, nothing particularly cool here. However, there are a couple cool uses that you can do with each of these abilities. So if you keep your units around, one of my favorite things to do is get them to veterancy. That's basically what Company of Heroes is all about, is getting your units to veterancy. Once they hit veterancy 1, let's simulate that here, they get this wonderful ability called a Tripwire Flare. The Tripwire Flare will, if detonated, if somebody runs over it, will kill a single model. So, you know, that's pretty good, actually. Units like Grenadiers, 4-man squads, maybe a sniper accidentally runs across it. That's pretty good. I like the ability. Plus, once it's detonated, it shoots a flare up in the air and gives you vision of that area. But what's really dirty about the Tripwire Flare is that you can use it to detonate a demo charge. So let's queue up an order to plant a Tripwire Flare and then a demo charge right on top of it. So what's going to happen for basically 100 munitions, so 10 for the Tripwire Flare and 90 for the demolition charge, I'm basically going to get a instant squad wiping death mine. So let's let's queue up another order to have them move away from it when we're done. It does take some time to build, but if you're able to queue up those orders using the shift command, you'll actually be able to have it done while you're not even paying attention. All right. So my combat engineers have moved away. Thank you, combat engineers. I'm going to use these cheat commands here to turn this whole mess here into an enemy mine. You can see these little small things here. That's the tripwire. And let's convert the demo charge. So the demo charge has disappeared because I don't have a minesweeper. And now the tripwire flare has also disappeared. So this is now enemy. So if I am to walk across this, we'll see what happens. Evaporated. There's basically no squad that can survive this. The Tripwire Flare actually triggers the demo charge, and when the demo charge is triggered, it actually does some extra damage. Look at that crater. Poor Vasily here just isn't going to make it. So I've recreated Vasily here and company, and they're back to Vet 1. Now, you can do the same trick with the demo charge and a mine. Let's do that now. However, it's an extra 30 munitions for the mine, and as far as the infantry squad wiping capability, you're really not going to get any extra infantry capability. You will, however, gain the ability, if it should be a vehicle that runs over it, to really put a hurt on a vehicle. You're going to be talking about massive damage that's going to happen to a vehicle. Let's go ahead and get, we'll get maybe this Jagdpanzer here. Alright, so the charge has been planted. Slow down there, champ. And let's go ahead, we'll convert this to an enemy minefield. And let's see what kind of damage that this has. Dead. The Jagdpanzer, if I remember correctly, has 640 health. So, one mine, one squad wipe for what? 120 munitions? Not bad. I've got the same setup here. This time I'm going to do it with a Panther. Let's go ahead and make this an enemy minefield. The Panther has 800 health. Let's see what kind of damage we're going to get after running over it with a Panther. So, not fully going to kill a Panther, but you've got it pretty low on health, and you're going to get at least a damaged engine, potentially even a destroyed engine. Not a bad investment. So, which is better? A mine in the demo charge or the Tripwire Flare in the demo charge? I suppose it depends on what you're trying to kill. The Tripwire will trigger if a tank runs over it. However, it won't set off the demo charge unless it's an infantry soldier. So, if you want to still have the ability, the problem that you're running into is maybe blobs, and you're really concerned about the blobs and not so much the vehicles, maybe use the Tripwire, because that way, even if a vehicle does run over it, oh well, it's triggered, but at least you still have your demo charge that you could later manually trigger, or maybe replant that Tripwire and still have that demo charge available to maybe wipe some squads. Okay, so that was cool. What other kind of tips do I have for you? So, there are a few other things that I like to do with combat engineers. So, if there's a particular house that is maybe becoming quite bothersome, one thing that you can do is plant a mine right in front of the doorway. That way, if the enemy is maybe popping out Fallschirmjägers or some other kind of unit that can, stormtroopers, something else that can come out of these buildings, as soon as they pop out of that doorway, they're going to hit that mine and die. One other good mine placement trick is that you can put mines on the other side of green cover. So, if I know that maybe my enemy has been using this tractor all game to get behind and shoot at me, I can maybe place a mine there, and then next time his soldiers will come up, they're going to hit that mine, and they're going to die. You can also use barbed wire to cover green cover. So, if I don't want my enemy here, of course we talked about putting a mine, I can also build barbed wire. But what's interesting, you may already know about the barbed wire, you don't actually have to complete the barbed wire to make it block the ability to get cover there. So I've only partially constructed it. I'm going to run away. This is called ghost wiring. Some people call it cheese wiring. But basically, and I'm going to convert this to enemy wire so I don't get the option to repair it. Basically, it's going to prevent me from getting there. Now, I can still attack it. So if I click it, my combat engineers can still shoot at it. But it will take a while to destroy, and is not going to be the kind of thing that you're going to be able to do in the heat of battle. So let's take a look at the Flamethrower upgrade. The Flamethrower upgrade is something I usually get on at least one of my combat engineer squads. I typically build two. I have one combat engineer squad with a Flamethrower, and one with a mine detector. What kind of cool things, though, can we do with the Flamethrower? Let's take a look. So one cool thing that I can do with the Flamethrower is that I can actually attack through certain buildings and hedges. So if I know that there's a squad here through maybe a recon run, or maybe there's another unit that's giving me vision, I can actually use the attack ground option to attack these guys. So if I hit attack ground right in the center clump where all these guys are, look at this damage that I'm going to be getting. If they do run away, I may have to redirect my attack ground option. See if I can get some better bursts in here. Not quite the best spot. There we go. Pretty neat trick. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is the veterancy abilities of these units. I mentioned in a previous video that if you hover your mouse over these stars, you get an idea of what their veterancy is. So each of these will give you a description. However, the specifics is something that I do want to cover. At Vet 1, we talked about the Tripwire ability. There's nothing else magic behind the scenes that Vet 1 gives you. At Vet 2, however, not only do you get a 62% increase in each model's repair efficiency, but you also get a 20% increase to the accuracy of both the rifles and your Flamethrower. Lastly, at Vet 3, there's no extra damage while repairing. So typically if you're repairing or constructing something, your models take extra received accuracy, meaning that if a unit is firing against them, they will be more accurate than if the combat engineers weren't repairing. However, at Vet 3, this is no longer the case. Plus, you get an extra 15% boost to your accuracy and an extra 15% cooldown reduction, meaning that they're not only going to fire more accurately, but they're also going to fire more frequently. Well, that sums it up for this unit. If you've got some additional questions, feel free to post them down in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.
Bam 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 ba dam bam.